Hey everybody, welcome back to the next part in my dialing in series where I take our Line 6 Helix and try to dial in either specific amps or maybe get close to specific classic or iconic guitar tones that we all have grown to know and love over the years. This week I wanted to do one that's a tone that I really, really love. This is more of a request by me, I think, than anything, but some of the early Larry Carlton tones. Now, a lot of people would think of Larry Carlton now using kind of more a Dumble amp or the Bluto tone, which is kind of a take on the Dumble. But the tones I was kind of more interested in seeing if we could dial in, and maybe I will do a part two with more of those Dumble style tones, but I want to go back in the time frame where he was doing like his self-titled album with Room 335 on it. What a great song. Or even some of the session work he did with Steely Dan, you know, Solar Kid Charlemagne, etc. So back then, from what my research told me, he actually, in a lot of those sessions, was just taking his 335, Gibson 335, and plugging straight into a little Fender Tweed Deluxe amp. Apparently, it was a pretty simple tone. It was sort of plugged direct in, very few effects, you know, maybe some stuff added afterwards. So I thought, let's see if we can dial that in. And it actually ended up turning out pretty good with the Helix. And I think this patch here is a testament to how simple a patch we can create without, you know, some of the other patches I've done for this series have been like 4 or 5 parametric EQs and really, you know, playing around a lot with the core amp tone. But this one I was trying to just go with as little as possible to change that amp tone. So let's dive into HXet and I'll show you what I did. First of all, I'm playing my Godin Montreal Premier Supreme. It's the only semi-hollow body guitar I have. So the closest thing I have in my collection to a 335, mind you, it's not a 335. So again, you know, anybody who has a 335 that tries this patch, I would love to hear how it sounds on that. But like always, this is just a standard disclaimer. I'm not saying I'm dialing in this sound exactly, and it's obviously going to be different depending on your monitoring system and your guitar. So it's just trying to get somewhere in the ballpark, okay? Again, I'm going to have a separate performance video up of me playing a little bit with a great backing track of the song Room 335. Again, the backing track is courtesy of bobbiesbackingtracks.com. The best backing tracks out there, so check those guys out if you are looking for backing tracks, and I'll put the link in the description below. So when you hear that video, it's going to be separate from this video. Keep in mind that you're listening to the backing tracks from bobbiesbackingtracks.com, and I think you'll notice that this tone sat quite nicely and gave that Carlton, early Carlton vibe to it. So let's dive in and take a look at HXEdit then and see what we did. So I have my patch here called Carlton'ish. And something silly here. I threw up 2 of the same amp model. This is just for comparison purposes right now. I'm going to delete one of these when I start to play with it. What I decided on was the US Deluxe Norm. I know that's a model of a different version of the Deluxe than what Carlton would have used on this, but I figured it was a good starting point. It actually worked really nicely. So, the default settings are the 112 US Deluxe cabinet. 160 ribbon. I believe I didn't touch this. I believe this was just the standard stock default settings. 160 ribbon at 2 inches. So I didn't touch that. I left that alone. But the default settings on the Deluxe Norm were drive at 5, bass 5.1, mid 5, treble 4.4, presence at 2, and master at 10. And what that sounded like, if you notice, I have everything else turned off in this path right now. So when you pull this up with just the default cab and mic, it sounds like this. Okay, nothing wrong with it, but it's not the tone I was going after. So let me just get rid of this now, this block, clear that one, and go to the amp that I actually used, which was same amp model, but here's the settings I used. I turned the drive up to 9.5, bass down to 3.7, mid I cranked to 10, treble at 6.4, presence at 4.8, channel volume around 9, and master at 8. Okay, this was a fairly mid-focus tone with a nice attack in the high mids and high end, but without being really piercing. So that's why I ended up on these settings. It also breaks up nicely when he digs into it, but isn't overly distorted. So with these settings, with nothing else, the tone sounds like this compared to what we just heard from the default settings. You hear a lot more bite and cuts through nicely. So I was actually getting pretty happy with that. The only thing I did notice about that, the low end was maybe just a hair too flubby and out of control. So I went to my split crossover block that I oftentimes use, set a lot of times where I have it at 650 hertz. And all I didn't touch the high end above 650 hertz with it, or the high mids, but I did go below that, and I just shaved off 1 dB, and that just gave a subtle change to it that tightened up that low end a bit. Okay. Believe it or not, I really didn't do a whole lot more tone shaping to that. One thing I did do, though, is like I always do, is add in the compressor at the end, and I went slightly heavy. In the last few videos, I've been noticing when I've been using these inside the mix, sometimes when I have my normal setting of 5 on the peak reduction, I've been finding that I always, when I go into the mix, I always feel like, I wish I had a touch more deeper compression, just a little more squash in it. So I've been leaning towards bumping that up when I'm recording anyways, lately to maybe 6, even as high as 6.5. But I mean, 5 would work, but it's just more about getting that sitting in the mix nice up. So I went with 6 here. So if I add that in now, this is what the tone sounded like. A little more control again. All right. The other thing I did, really very little EQ work on this one. All I did, nothing on the parametric side of things, but I just went with a high cut at 10.5 kilohertz and a low cut at 100 hertz. And that sounded like this. You'll notice it just took away a little bit of that brittle high end, tightened up the lows a slight bit more. Okay. And then I noticed I was using the song Room 335 from Larry Carlton's self-titled album. I can't remember which year that was from, back mid-late 70s, I'm going to say. There was a fair bit of wetness to the sound. It had a nice reverb to it. So I chose a plate reverb with 15 millisecond pre-delay, 4.5 on the decay, high cut at 4 kilohertz, and a mix of 25%. And that made that same tone sound like this. It's really starting to come together with that. But in the particular Room 335 song, I also noticed it almost had a subtle doubling effect. Now, I don't think Larry would have gone through and doubled the entire guitar track to it. So I'm thinking he had some sort of maybe short delay. Could have possibly been a subtle chorus effect. I don't know. I decided to go with a bit of a short delay. Now, you could decide to turn this on or off if you want. It's not a crucial part of the tone. As you can hear with it off, this is still sounding all right. With it on, though, what I did is I put a 51 millisecond delay with feedback of 0, and a mix around 40%. It just added a bit of depth to it and helped it sit in the mix again. Pretty subtle, but gives it a nice depth. With it off, that's the tone, and I think it is a pretty reasonable facsimile of that early Carlton-esque kind of a sound. Probably helps to be able to play like Carlton too, which I'm probably not doing very good imitation of right now. But so anyways, that's how I got that tone. Please take a minute to go listen to the other video. Like I said before, I'm splitting these up because the performance videos end up getting hit with copyright notices, and it just, you know, there's always a potential of them being blocked. They demonetize them and so on and so forth. So I figure instead of, you know, ruining the whole long dialing in video with that, or even potentially having it blocked so nobody can see it, or even in certain countries I've had that with an Eagles Hotel California solo video, and nobody in the US can watch it. So I figure I'll just separate them, you know, and you guys can go and watch that as well. So kind of I'll put these both up at the same time. You'll see it's already up on the channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I think that was a pretty cool patch as far as just taking something very simple, right? Without too much crazy EQing or even too crazy on that split crossover. You know, I could even turn off that 1 dB change on the split crossover. It just tightens up the low end a bit. Even without it, you could get away with that patch quite nicely. It's going to work, right? So, like I said, it's a good example of a patch that's really quite straight ahead and simple, but sounds really good. And I think you'll notice it sounds really nice in the mix. I was really happy with it. I think I'll be using this patch for even some of my own stuff with any semi-hollow body tones I want. You know, and feel free. You guys can tweak it to your own personal taste and for whatever purpose you're using it with too. But anyways, I hope you guys liked that one, and it'll be up on Custom Tone by the time this video is out, so go feel free to grab that. So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I really appreciate the support, the kind words, and the kind comments. Feel free to leave me any questions or comments you have about this, and I'm more than happy to try to answer. And share the video, like it, please subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. It helps me to keep doing these. And I will be back more. I'll be back soon with more content that hopefully you guys will enjoy. All right, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon. Ciao for now.